Well, welcome to Mindful Living Week. My name is Susan Piper. I'm a teacher in the Shambhala Buddhist lineage. And today we're here to talk about the inner qualities of the heart. And there's really no one better to talk about this with than Sharon Salzberg, a senior teacher in the Insight meditation community and the author of many books. She tells me 10, that definitely qualifies as many. Her latest book is called Real Love. So I'm really looking forward, Sharon, to talking to you about this. Thanks so much for being here.
I'm just delighted. Thank you.
It's always good to see you.
And you.
So your book is called Real Love. So I guess a good place to start would be, how do you define real love?
Can I dare to?
I'm all ears.
Well, interestingly, the book actually was born out of one line in a movie. The movie is called Dan in Real Life. It's maybe 11, 12 years old now. And the line in the movie is, love is not a feeling, it's an ability. And of course, it is a feeling in all of our conventional understanding. But I love that line because it resembled so much experiences I had doing intensive loving kindness meditation practice, where I realized that up until a certain point, I'd always thought of love as something in someone else's hands. It was like a commodity, and they might give it to me, they might bestow it upon me, then I'd have love in my life, or they could take it away from me, and then I'd have nothing. And that all kind of turned around in the course of that retreat, and I realized, no, it's inside of me as a capacity, as an ability, and that somebody might ignite it or inspire it or threaten it, but they can never actually give it to me or take it away from me. And that was so close to love is not a feeling, it's an ability. And what is an ability to do? I really define love as connection, a powerful acknowledgement of our lives having something to do with one another. So distinct from liking somebody or approving of them or wanting to have dinner with them or go to the movies with them. It's in that moment, it's this deep, deep knowing our lives are connected.
I love that. It's powerful and it is empowering, because a lot of people, I could put myself on this list too. We're like, well, I just hope someone will love me.
Yeah, that's right.
But really, I could just have love. It takes a lot of courage to do that, does it not?
Yeah, and it is power. I always have this image of a person standing at my doorstep with a package of love and like looking down at the address and saying, no, I don't think so, and going away. And I'm going, wait a minute, and how much of our lives do we spend waiting and longing and, sometimes being fulfilled, but then being nervous. What if it goes away? And, it can be a very different state.
I really, it's so helpful and wonderful. And you are a meditation teacher, mindfulness. What role do you think mindfulness practice has, if any, in real love?
I think mindfulness is crucial as a quality, and I think meditation is like a super great way of developing it. It may be far from the only way, but I think it's so direct and it's so streamlined toward that deepening, because I think that a lot of that sense of connection is born out of how we pay attention. I commonly use the example of meeting a stranger, and you're standing somewhere and they're talking to you and you're not really listening and you're not really looking at them. You're thinking about the email you need to write or thinking about who else you'd rather be talking to. And so there isn't the kind of groundwork laid for actually having a sense of connection. And maybe you realize that and you arrive. You actually do the same mental gesture that we do in meditation. You gather your energy and you return to where you actually are. That you can be open to them. You can learn. You can draw new conclusions maybe or no conclusions, but there is that sense of connection. I was telling this to somebody and they said, well, it's really the same in a long-term relationship as well. It's like you stop listening. You don't really look at them very often. You're kind of like, I know this story is going to end. I don't think I'll bother, and how amazing to bring our attention together and actually be open to surprise, and that kind of curiosity and aliveness, which is our potential.
That's fantastic. And it also, as helpful as the first thing you said about just the way you describe real love, because it makes you think, well, I can actually rouse love in any moment simply by the way I place my mind, and they're really not that different. So that's very helpful too. Now, you're a renowned teacher of loving kindness practice. I just hope this isn't just personal about me, not you, but I find I can do loving kindness for strangers. I can do loving kindness for, enemies. It can be really hard to do, of course, for myself, but the person I love. So there's so much complexity in there.
Yeah.
Can you talk about what role cultivating loving kindness plays in our love lives, no matter what kind of relationship?
I think, when I, in the book, there's sort of a progression starting with cultivating real love or loving kindness for ourselves. And again, it takes such a powerful understanding of what it means and what it doesn't. It actually doesn't imply a certain action, say with another. It doesn't mean you're going to together. It doesn't mean you're going to spend time together. Maybe all kinds of other considerations are coming up in your mind, including some compassion for yourself, but one's heart can be free and kind of uncluttered so that there is that direct sense of, wishing well, like I wish you could come out of your suffering, or I wish, you could appreciate yourself, or whatever it might be. And so one of the ironies of the classical progression of loving kindness practice is that the underlying principle is we're supposed to do it in the easiest way possible. And that's why we begin with ourselves, which is a tremendous irony.
I know.
In this age for many of us, it's like,
Yeah.
Really? I'm supposed to be easy? So I always just go to that underlying principle and I say, don't struggle. Don't make it a project. I can't possibly care about anyone else till I love myself fully, because it could be a long time. But you definitely have to include yourself, but maybe it'll be later. We're going to play with this. And then in terms of, so after I work with love for oneself or loving kindness for oneself, if that's where we're starting, we move on to loving kindness for another, whether it's a partner or a friend, child or teacher, or whatever it might be. And we look at really the same qualities at play, where we're pretty well only noticing the negative at this point. Is that just where our minds go? And one of the features of loving kindness practice is what I call a stretch. Mindfulness practice is sort of designed to help us see clearly what actually is and have a different relationship to it. And loving kindness practice is like a stretch. So if, for example, you're so keyed in negative, what happens when you spend a little airtime on what's good within someone, including yourself? That may not come naturally. It usually doesn't. But it's not forced and coerced and conflict avoidant and trying to pretend everything is perfect. It's just saying, in effect, I'm moving from a truth that I often visit to a truth I hardly ever visit. So what happens when I stretch and I include that as well as this? And so we pay attention differently. We notice how we're paying attention. This is what I was talking about before. How fragmented are we? How present are we? How balanced are we? Can we really absorb everything that's going on, or are we immediately interpreting and kind of defending or fighting or something like that? Can we give a little space to what's in that experience? In some ways, it's like, what's the space between us? And a lot of the work we do in those realms, in certain relationships, where there's flexibility, like not perhaps with a child where you can't say, take care of yourself. It's not like that, but in kind of different relationships where we're more equal, we look to see, where's the balance? Like people, I tried to crowdsource the book a lot and hear from a lot of people their stories and their insights about love. And you know what that's like. It's very complex.
Yeah.
So, there was one man who told me, it was very interesting. He said that for him, coming to a more real love with his wife meant, in a way, getting off the seat of privilege and not having everything refer to his needs. That's kind of the main center point of all decision making, but actually be generous, and maybe something might inconvenience him, but was important to his wife, and move in that way. And I balanced that out, or I tried to balance it out with a story of a friend of mine who outlived her cancer prognosis by, I think it was like 40 years, honestly.
Wow.
And when she was first diagnosed, she was telling me about when she was first diagnosed, and she said she looked at just everything in her life. And in terms of her marriage, she said, I used to be the kind of person who'd be sitting in the car with my husband, boiling hot, and the most I could ever bring myself to say was, are you warm, dear?
Wow.
And she said that changed, so they were kind of opposite, both those people.
It's,
He had to move away, she had to move more toward giving voice to her authentic experience and claiming it. And so I think that's why there's no formula, but we see where we are out of balance, or where we're, just askew in some way, and we move for a greater balance and a greater authenticity.
that's so great. I love both of those stories. And I have to say, when I got married, I was surprised to find out there was someone else in the relationship. Because I thought,
what are you doing here?
Wow, I thought this was about me. So it does take a lot to, even though I thought I was a loving person, but to make room in that way is, whether you're going towards or claiming more attention for yourself, it's interesting, which sort of leads into the next question, which is importance of self-compassion. How do you were just saying how difficult it is to start loving kindness with yourself. How do people cultivate self-compassion? And you alluded to it a little bit, but if there's anything else you want to say, it would be great. And what role does that play in real love?
I think self-compassion is fascinating, for one thing. And I think we're actually cultivating it in mindfulness meditation, as an example, or even in beginning meditation or foundational meditation of concentration, because self-compassion, it's not the same as self-esteem. It's not like taking the time, which is also good to do, taking the time. Hey, I learned how to do 3 things on the computer today I didn't know how to do before. I learned how to play tennis, or whatever it is. Self-compassion comes into play when we've blown it, when we've made a mistake, when we've wandered far, perhaps from our aspiration or our goal, and we've been lost. And then we need self-compassion so that we don't launch into like a 1.5-year diatribe, about how terrible we are and awful we are, which tends to, in meditation, as an example, maybe you sit down with the intention of feeling your breath, the flow of the in and out breath, and it's 800 breaths. Before your mind wanders, it's 1 breath, and then you're gone. And then comes the magic moment when you realize, oh, it's been quite some time since I last took a breath. We really could go on and on and on and on, blaming ourselves and being down on ourselves and putting ourselves down and feeling like a failure, or practice letting go more gently and with kindness toward ourselves begin again. Mm-hmm. So we've added sometimes considerably to the length of the distraction, and we're exhausted. We're so demoralized at the end. This is why we sometimes call meditation practice like resilience training. How do I start over? How do I begin again? How do I bounce back? Well, the root of that is self-compassion. Kindness toward yourself, and say, okay, let me pick it up. Let me begin again. And it's, I think, of all the kind of life lessons of meditation, I think it's one of the most profound, because it sounds really simplistic, but we need it like every day. How often in life is something like never, right? We're always falling down and having to pick ourselves up or help us up and move on, or we make a mistake and we have to kind of think through that for lessons learned and then start over. So we're always doing that one thing. And so self-compassion is really the root. I think that the hardest thing probably in the development of it is thinking it's worthwhile. Wow. Because people, I find, in teaching meditation, where it would come through in just the way I was describing, would say, well, that's just like being lazy, that's like giving up, not really trying. And it's really not. I think these are beginning to show, as far as I understand, that it's actually the effective, most efficient way to learn something, to make a change in your life, something like that. Like that harshness and that punitive energy will tend to spike our at something, but briefly, and then we crash.
And Buddhism is really famously associated with, compassion and bodhisattva activity, and not thinking of yourself as the most important person. So we'll get confused by that. Like, I should just not have a me at all, because also I don't really exist. And shouldn't it really just be all about others? What would you say to people that have that question?
People do have that question. And I just try to, let's be realistic about things, like that's an interesting story. There's no me, but really what's your experience? And, and here again, attention is so crucial. Like, what does it feel like? And once of going on that diatribe against yourself, is that useful? Because the opposite of the self-compassion is not, it's all empty, let me just start again, It's, I can't believe I did that, I'm so horrible, right? So suddenly there is a self. It's a bad one.
Right. So helpful. And the question, is it useful, is like the best question ever. If we could only ask ourselves that more, not the way we talk to ourselves and others, but especially ourselves. Or maybe people watching who are like, yeah, that sounds awesome. I'm really going to try to do those things, Sharon. But what about the people in a relationship with that aren't interested in loving kindness and mindfulness? What can I do to get them to be this way too?
Well, it's short of that. Of course, dynamics can shift quite a lot as one person shifts. I think there's a certain kind of equanimity or acceptance that's inevitable. I think I have a Google search on the word mindfulness. Somebody suggested it to me. It's actually very interesting. So every day I get all these articles that somebody mentions mindfulness in. And so I've kind of watched the explosion, and I've watched the backlash. Mm-hmm. And some amount of the backlash is happening from people writing things saying, I am so tired of my friends saying I should learn mindfulness. And I can't bear one more person telling me to learn how to meditate. And I think, well, I don't blame you, actually. Yeah, exactly. It's kind of dreary, so I wouldn't so much hope for someone else to change, but really be free to change oneself. And
it does seem to be the most possible solution in a way. Well, thank you. At the end of each chapter of your book, you share simple, practically useful to help people not just read about these things and then put the book back on the shelf, but to just really bring them into their heart and into their lives. And thank you for doing that. It's really helpful. Is there a practice that you can share here that you think would help people find a sense of connection in their lives?
Well, there's always attention, like gathering one's energy and really being present. I like kind of being back at one's intention, which you can do in many ways. One simple way that I encourage people, like if I go in a workplace or some organization to teach, I suggest, like, before a major phone call or big meeting or something, just ask yourself, what is it I want to see? Like, do I want to be seen as right, or do I want a resolution? Do I want to make other people more comfortable, or do I want to grind them into dust? And just, of course, be honest and kind toward oneself in terms of what you see. But I find it really fascinating, because when we know more where we're coming from, we have much more of a sense of the relatedness, that we will be acting with everyone in the room.
That's great. So to connect with how you really are feeling, and to be honest with yourself, as you say, and not ashamed, in a way that allows for the great range, all the things humans feel, and to soften towards that sounds really, really useful. Really useful. This may be an unfair question, so feel free to say that's an unfair one. But if there's like one thing in your book, or one thing that you could, like, if you could open everyone's heart and just put this one message in there about what it means to love, what real love is, that people take away.
Wow. I would probably go back to love for oneself, and that we do have a potential, including for ourselves, and that this isn't wrong. It's not something to be ashamed of or feel squeamish about. We should be happy. Everybody has that desire. Everyone should be happy. And we don't have to do anything to deserve being loved, simply because we exist. And there is love in this universe. We can access it.
That's great. And I totally agree with you for what that's worth, that the ability to be kind to yourself is the seed syllable of so much love. So thank you so much, Sharon. It's a delight to talk with you. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for your work in this world to bring more love. Sharon, I was wondering if you would be so kind as to guide us through a short loving kindness practice about receiving ourselves.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So why don't you sit comfortably? If you're in a conducive place, close your eyes. If not, or you're familiar with practicing with your eyes open, that's fine. To leave them open. Let your energy settle into your body. See what offering, what gift you would like to give to yourself. With 2 or 3 or 4 phrases, you can gently repeat them. Phrases like, may I be safe, and be happy, be healthy, live with ease. Live with ease means in the things of day-to-day life, like livelihood and family, such a struggle. Be safe, be happy, be healthy, live with ease. You can use these phrases or phrases that make most sense to you, and just gently repeat them over and over again. The energy is gift giving, it's offering, it's blessing. And if you find your attention's wandered, it's okay. See if you can gently let go and return to the phrases. You don't have to struggle for a certain kind of feeling or to have anything happen. The power of the practice is in that complete wholehearted gathering, the presence of your whole being behind one phrase, and then the next. See if you can call to mind someone who symbolizes the power of love for you, a benefactor, someone who's helped you, perhaps helped you directly, or maybe you've never met them. They've inspired you from afar. The texts say this is the one who, when you think of them, you smile. Who lifts your spirits? Just thinking about them. So if someone like that comes to mind, bring them here. You can get an image of them, say their name, get a feeling for their presence, and offer the phrases of loving kindness to them. Even if the words aren't perfect, they're the vehicle for the heart's energy, so they're serving us. May you be safe, be happy, be healthy, live with ease. I have the benefit in turn, offer loving kindness to you. Let's see what happens. Maybe you feel resentful or grateful or embarrassed, but see if those feelings can just wash through you as you steady your attention on the phrases for yourself. As the recipient, may you be safe, be happy, be healthy, live with ease. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was really wonderful. It was amazing to feel the love of a benefactor come to me.
Mm-hmm.
That was so uplifting. Thank you, Sharon.